Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again for another episode of Gracefully His. I've got Dave and Shellby Nalette back with us this week from By Grace International. It's their ministry that they have. And this week we're just kind of following up to the story that they told us of how God brought them together, with just some additional questions to ask you guys about it. And particularly any advice that you guys have too for people that are coming into it. So one of the things I definitely wanted to bring out when you were telling your story was talking about going back to your parents and going back to seek, guidance and wisdom from them, the counseling that you got from your parents, and how important that is. Because I know in my own life, that's something that from the very get-go, from the time I was a teenager, that purposed in my own heart that when the time came and I met somebody, that I would go to my parents and seek their guidance and wisdom on it. And if they came back and said, this is not right, we've got to check in our spirit about it or anything else, it is something that I've told them I will walk away. I will absolutely walk away, because sometimes I think when you're in the middle of that relationship, you can't see clearly.
Right.
So for you guys, as far as with your parents, what was that? Do you have any advice with that, or anything you want to add to just the counsel of your parents?
Yeah, I wouldn't say you can't see clearly.
It's
I would
harder
say,
to.
but I would say you're learning to see clear, and that's why it's so important to go to someone who's seasoned in a relationship, in a marriage. What you're wanting to go into, and to get counsel from them, because they're seasoned in it, and you're learning to see clear into that step, into that path, and they have a clarity, they have a light and an illumination that you don't have yet.
Yeah.
And so I think seeking your parents is just so crucial for me. Having the approval of my parents, having the godly wisdom and guidance that they offered me through that time was just phenomenal. And my parents, they really deferred to me in a lot of situations. The Lord had quickened them prior to David and I meeting that God was going to be bringing someone into my life. Not that he sat there and told them that, but they just felt it in their spirit that I was going to be entering into a new season. And they felt it before I did. So they were preparing themselves. And I really, from that point on, they had peace with David, or the situation moving forward. They hadn't met him yet. They had peace over the situation.
They liked me when they met me, but
I'm just kidding. They did. And so, that being said, they really were there to hold my hand if I needed it. But they didn't walk me through it. And so I valued that so much. So if there are parents listening, it's not so much that you show your kids how to do it. It's you've shown them by living as an example before them. And now you grab their hand if they need it. And so they did. They grabbed my hand in prayer and they prayed with me. They answered questions that I had and gave me godly advice, and I valued. But they trusted me to walk it out, and I appreciate that. And their wisdom was just everything. Now, David, on the other hand,
I told them, I talked to them, but I did it.
He was very much in love, and just in that,
I was in my own world.
State world, and young and a little bit dumb.
Still am. But no. But it was a little different kind of scenario, and so I just told them, hey, I met this girl, really like her.
Yeah.
Praying about marrying her.
I think I'm gonna marry her.
And
so they were just like, that's great, but they didn't really know, how serious David was.
Right.
In it.
Until I told them I was going to meet her, and they were like, wait.
You're what?
You're what?
This is way more serious than we thought. So what was your advice to young men? Because that was not nice to do to your parents. And
communicate.
You would not want your kids to do that to you. No,
absolutely not. And I think
now that you've grown, you see it differently.
Yes. And I think it's important to communicate those things clearly, especially when you're in those late teen, early adult years. Those conversations can feel awkward to have. But you need to communicate. You got to say the word properly in order to communicate. But communicate clearly with your parents and with whoever you're talking to about this situation.
Yeah, it might
so
be a
that
pastor, it might be a godly friend
Right.
that you have. You might not have.
But if you don't communicate
parents or-
clearly, you don't give them the opportunity to speak clearly into your life.
into your life, and that can be a real blessing.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's not talking to everybody. We're talking about talking to specific people. For you, that's your parents. For me, that was my parents. And for you, that was your parents. We have very awesome parents, all three of us. And so for you, it might not be that.
Right.
But there is someone that God's placed in your life to be a godly voice and a godly witness to you. And so seeking wisdom and counsel from them and being open to that is extremely beneficial. And it'll help. Even just having someone to agree with you in prayer is just huge.
Absolutely. But it's a decision you've got to make before you're in the relationship. Because if you don't, I mean, just like you both talked about waiting until marriage and that being a decision that you had both made, if that's not a decision that you make before you're in the relationship, then it's a lot harder to make that decision and stick to it once you're in the relationships.
And you're talking about waiting till marriage to have sex, because that
And
I mean, it was already hard. Once you know
that you're going to get married,
you're going to marry this person.
Well, I'll say this. If you are engaged to somebody, you're going to get married them, and that is not a temptation, you better think long and hard about if you're with the right person.
Correct.
Because
God's bringing you together. There's anticipation building.
Exactly.
So that should be a desire that you have. It's not a wrong desire to have.
But it's important to have that decision made ahead of time so that when you're in the moment, you've got that decision to fall back on. We've already decided
draw the line in the sand
before we get to that point that this isn't happening.
Right. And one of our favorite sayings was from Keith Moore, and he said, "Almost married is not married." So when the temptations arise,
we would look at each other.
Almost married is not married. And so that's just such a great thing to remember and to know.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, we definitely made that decision long beforehand, both of us.
Yes.
For people that have made that decision and are waiting until marriage, whether they're in a relationship right now or they're not in a relationship, what's some guidance that you would give them as far as how to not go all the way? How to make sure that is it just not simply putting yourself in the situation? I mean, you're going to be alone with the person. You're getting ready to marry them. I mean, we don't live in a day and age where
and it's important to have that alone time.
All the time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's important to have that alone time
where
together.
You can communicate and build that relationship, But
you don't need to be alone with the lights dim.
10 o'clock
Marvin Gaye playing. You're just setting yourself up. You know what's going to happen if you do that. And that's just, you're putting yourself in a compromising situation. It's okay to be alone and to do things alone. But just know your limits and really discuss those limits with each other.
Absolutely.
Hey, I cannot do that. There's something about driving down that dirt road with you, baby. I can't do that.
My knee, I can't.
You just know your limits and set those for you as individuals.
Right, and you also have to respect your partner's limits, because something maybe in that engaged dating scenario, something may be a temptation for me, but it's not necessarily a temptation for you,
right?
And vice versa. And so if I've got the conviction to come to you and say that this is an issue for me, then it's vitally important that your partner do what they can to respect that as well, because that's honoring your partner and future spouse. So it's just
starting that open communication in the very beginning, because snuggling on the couch might be no big deal for me. Like let me lay all over David, let me snuggle with him throughout our engagement. That might not be a problem for me, but it may be too much for you, or vice versa. And so just knowing each of those limits and setting them, and then really sticking to them. And if you do slip up, or you do go too far, or end up having sex outside of marriage, submit that to the Lord. He's gracious, and He is good, and He is, your life's not ruined, your marriage isn't doomed because of that.
Don't buy the lie from the enemy that just because you may have done that you forfeited the right to a good, godly successful marriage.
That's not
That's
not
a lie
true. That's
from the devil.
Lie from the devil. The Lord still, His will for you is good.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is something to you, forgive yourself, forgive
Yes.
your partner,
Mm-hmm.
and move on. Move on. Something our pastor says is focus forward. Forget and forgive everybody involved in the situation and focus forward. You know, we weren't perfect in everything leading up to our wedding, and we had vowed no kiss and not to kiss and to not have sex before marriage. But the things that there wasn't lines drawn on the sand on, they were hard, and we had a lot of shame that we felt, a lot of things that bothered us. That if we would have just made it stop being about us and our ability to to do right and put it in the hands of the Father and His ability, then it would have been so much easier. So that's my advice on that. I mean, our advice on that.
Advice.
You know, y'all mentioned something when they were telling their story before, that you gave Dave over the phone during one of your conversations a week into it, after he had kind of, you know, proclaimed his undying affection towards you.
His love.
You had given him some things that were kind of your non-negotiables.
Right.
Your things that you thought were going to scare him off, that may have scared him off before, and they didn't scare him off. He immediately responded with, well, okay, if that's what if that's what your heart is set on, then I'm okay with that. And I know that's something Allie and I have talked about before, and talking about going into a relationship. If you are in a relationship with someone, whether, you know, you're in a relationship with a guy, or a guy that's in a relationship with a girl, your girlfriend, if that person doesn't respect your boundaries, doesn't respect the decisions that you've made, and want to honor that with you, then I can right now say that's a relationship you need to walk away from.
Well, and I just literally, as you were saying that, I heard this in my spirit. If your partner doesn't respect your boundaries before marriage, they're not going to respect your boundaries after marriage, during marriage.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's so important to have that trust in marriage. So important.
Yes.
Both sides.
So yeah, if there is someone that isn't, if you say to them, I don't want to kiss before I'm married, and they're pressuring you into doing something else, step back. Step back, reevaluate, seek God over it. If you say, I don't want to have sex before marriage, and they're pressuring you about it, step back, reevaluate, seek God over it. You know, go to the Holy Spirit in it, because that's not something.
It's not the Lord's desire for you.
Absolutely not.
No.
So
the Lord never leads by pressure. He never leads by anxiety, and He never leads by fear. And so if you feel fearful, anxious, or pressure, then it's not from the Lord. He leads by His peace and what there's peace in. Now, you may be in a situation where you have peace over the situation, but you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling anxious. Those are two different things. I was very innocent. I had some inner anxiety into getting married just because I was nervous. I never, I never walked that life before, that I was trusting the Lord and choosing to follow Him despite how I was feeling, and choosing peace over the situation. But but there was peace present in that. So, anxiety or pressure and things can be present, but you can choose not to partake in those. But if you're being led by those things, somebody's pressuring you, then that's not the Lord. It's not what He wants for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there if you have advice you would give to single people who are still waiting, advice you would give to people who are dating or newly engaged or recently married, what is that advice that you guys have taken away from your own walk, from your own story, that you would like to share with others?
I'll take singles. You
take singles, yeah.
You go first, though.
So I'll say to engaged people, start having those conversations now. Start having all those difficult conversations now. They say, the studies show that the two biggest fights that people have in marriage, the two biggest reasons for divorce, are sex and money. So start having those discussions now about finances. Start having those discussions about money. The difficult discussions that, well, you're having trouble paying your rent, but you got a $700 car payment every month. You know, those
Right.
are the discussions you need to
have
have.
$10,000 in credit card debt, but you're buying Oakley sunglasses that are $200 on the credit card.
I feel personally attacked. No, but have those conversations.
That was us when we got married. That was a conversation we had to have. We are
We did.
credit card debt free now.
Praise God.
Yes, praise the Lord.
But you know, have those conversations. The sooner you have them, and the sooner you can get out in front of them, the better off you'll be. And if you don't take singles, then we can do marrieds at the end.
Yeah. So singles, I would say, like I was in the previous video, I was talking about how I was really enjoying my life of singlehood, and I know that that's hard. I went through seasons where I didn't enjoy my life of singlehood either, and I know that's really easy for someone like me to say, in a sense where I was married when I was just freshly 20 versus you, who's been in a season of singleness for a lot longer. So it's really easy in a sense for me to say that, but the principles are still true. And learn to enjoy where you are on the way to where you're going. Like, just learn whatever it is. David and I had this conversation last week about, you know, we're in full-time ministry, but yet David still works a full-time job as well. And so, you know, his heart is to be just not doing that anymore and only doing the full-time ministry. And you know, we're just not at that point yet. Right. The Lord has not released him from the job that he is in to just do the ministry full-time, aside from working full-time. And so we had a discussion about that just last week, about we have to figure out a way for you to enjoy this season that you're in, because this is where God's placed us. Right. And so it has to be good. Like his goodness is here because we're in where he wants us to be. We're following him. We're obeying everything that he's instructed us to do. We're in his will. And so in this season, he desires to show us his goodness. Yeah. And it's supposed to be a good time. And I'm supposed to be enjoying this life. And so, yes, there's times where it's painful, but let those waves of pain, let those times where the singleness isn't fun, come and let them go. Yeah. Because he wants us to enjoy the seasons that we're in. Right. So my advice to all the single people would be, enjoy where you're at. Find ways to enjoy the season that you're in, and then watch what you're saying over those seasons. Speak life into the season, speak positivity into the season, because the power of your words, there's such power in your words. And if we're speaking that this is the worst season of your life, then it's going to be the worst season of your life. And I think if we line up our words, because scripture talks about our tongue is an udder, and so if we line up our words to the word of God and what they should be, then we're going to see our life take the direction that it needs to take.
I'd say, exactly. And I'd say, as far as, married people go, newly married, if you've been married for even a long time, I think one of the biggest things you can do is learn about yourself and your partner. Learn about one of the things that we've done over the last little bit is we've taken a couple different personality tests to kind of see what makes us tick, and we don't use them as a crutch, but so that we can communicate our needs and our wants and our desires. And it's greatly improved our ability to communicate, our ability to have conversations. We had an instance just the other week where I'd been working a really long week. It sounds completely stupid, but we had people coming over the next day, and we were making spaghetti. I was making the sauce the night before, and Shellby wanted to help me make the spaghetti sauce. And I'm an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs, and I'm an Enneagram Type 7. And if you don't know what those mean, it means that I'm always wanting some new kind of stimulation, something new and exciting, and I had been working and staring at my computer all week long. And Shellby offered, when I got off work, Shellby offered to help me make the sauce. And I said, no, I need to do it. I need to do it. And then I stopped because I realized, hang on, you're just needing something new to stimulate you after working on the computer all week long. And I was able to communicate to her that I'm not trying to be rude and cut you off. I'm just needing something new than typing away on a computer and having phone calls all day. And so that's helped us communicate.
Yeah.
And so there's that instantly stops any chance for offense to come in. And that really helps us grow in that. And I think additionally, as you grow and as you learn about each other, there's a lie that the world will tell newlyweds, and that's that the sex when you get married is the best it's going to be. That it's all great, it's fun, it's new, whatever.
The honeymoon phase
wears off. If you commit to learn about your partner, if you commit to study them, and if you commit ultimately that my goal is to please my partner, my goal is to satisfy my partner, then it'll only get better.
That's right.
As the longer you're married, the better it'll get. And by the time you're 20, you'll look back at year 1 and it'll be like, dear God, I don't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we can say that just 6 years in. And it's because we've made a commitment to serve the other person and to value the other person in marriage.
Yeah. I would just say 2 things to kind of tie into that. I would say first, I would always, no matter how long you've been married, for newlyweds or for people that have been married a long time, I would say continually find ways that your partner's attractive. There's a lot of very unattractive things that just happen in marriage, like you're living together, and I mean, you just see everybody at their worst. You see David works from home, so we see each other all day, every day, and so we're just always in each other's business, and continually looking at each other and thinking, wow, and saying it like, wow, you are handsome. And we tell our kids that. We tell our kids that, wow, you're beautiful. Wow, you're handsome. And we tell each other that, wow, you're gorgeous. And David will tell me that whenever I've rolled out of bed and I've got my hair's wild and my teeth aren't brushed and, just I'm looking a mess and, whatever, and I'll tell him it when he's got spaghetti sauce stained down his shirt and food in his beard and all of that, but continually finding ways. I think your eyes are so sexy. They're so attractive to me. I love your, your lips, or your smile just melts me, and just continually finding ways that the other person is attractive. And just, you may think, I don't really find my spouse attractive when they're not dressed, or I don't really find them attractive in general, but finding ways that they are attractive and seeing them as that, and it just really, it changes your
The more you talk
marriage.
about it too, the more you find them.
Yeah, the more
attractive.
you say it, the more you do it, you your eyes will open to it. I mean, it's who the Lord has brought to your life. He wants you to view that person that way.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say something else, but I don't remember now. I'm all distracted now by David's eyes.
Which is crazy to think, because I can't remember if you said in the first video or not, the first time that Shelby ever saw
I knew
David,
it was coming back.
she wasn't attracted to him at all.
No, we can stop the story there. I was not attracted to David at all when we first met. When we were married,
Yeah.
when we got married, I was attracted to him. I got
Lord
attracted.
did a work.
The Lord did a work on my heart. But okay, I stopped looking at him. Woo.
You weren't, but I think it's important to say that I think it's important you fall in love with the Jesus on the inside of him first.
Yeah. Well, and who was it? Was it Pastor Terry who said it to you about that we were running after people? 2 people running after. Who was it that said that?
I don't know, but Pastor Terry always has said that. Pastor Terry Pearsons, she says that her and Pastor George, and this is how it should be for everybody. You should be running full out for God, and whenever the right person comes into your life, you'll just look over one day and they'll be running full out for the Lord with you, and you just lock hands and keep running.
And that's a
and
picture
exactly
of what it was for
what
us.
happened for us as
Yeah.
well. I was running for the Lord, running full out for him. David was, and we looked over one day and we each were there, and we locked hands and kept running. And don't forget that when the times are hard. Don't forget it, because he's still the God that brought you together. He's
Absolutely.
faithful.
Absolutely.
Well, I am so excited you guys got to join us and talk about this. I know it's blessed me. I really hope that it has blessed you guys too as well that have been watching. So I will be linking their ministry. So if you're interested in checking out what Dave and Shellby do for their ministry, I encourage you to check it out. I know they're going to be posting it with theirs as well. So link up, partner with them as well. I mean, it's really important that, you know, in ministry, we support each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, I appreciate you guys doing this with us. I know there's so much more we could all share and talk about. Lots of stories and, you know, even just how, you know, y'all became a family with your kids. But that'll be another time that we do it. So until next time on Gracefully His, remember that in Him, you're everything, you're perfect, you're beautiful, you're gracefully His. We'll see you next week.